The courtroom had never been this quiet. Not after murder trials. Not after billion-dollar lawsuits. Not after politicians stood behind that witness stand and lied beneath oath. Yet, on that rainy Tuesday morning, every person inside courtroom 7 stopped breathing for a different reason. A little boy screamed, "Dad!" The sound echoed across polished wooden walls. Everyone turned. A man wearing faded work boots rushed forward. Before he could take another step, "Security!" the judge shouted. "Remove that man immediately." 2 officers grabbed his arms. The little boy cried even louder. "Please, he's trying to help." But nobody listened. The woman behind the bench never blinked. Judge Amelia Sterling, 41 years old, the youngest federal judge in state history. Known across America for one thing, she never made emotional decisions. Justice only, nothing else. She looked down at the stranger being dragged across her courtroom. His denim jacket was soaked from rain. His hands were rough. Mud stained his boots. He looked more like a construction worker than someone who belonged inside one of the country's most respected courtrooms. "Your Honor," one officer said, "he claims he has information." Judge Amelia didn't hesitate. So does every desperate man. "Take him outside." The stranger stopped resisting. He simply looked toward the frightened boy standing beside the witness stand. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was too late." Then something exploded outside. Boom! The courtroom shook. Glass shattered. People screamed. The lights flickered. Smoke rolled across the windows. One officer fell to the floor. The judge instinctively shielded the little boy behind the bench. Someone yelled, "Gun!" Chaos swallowed the courtroom, and the very man Amelia had ordered removed became the only person running toward the danger. 6 hours earlier, the alarm rang at 4:15 a.m. Daniel Carter was already awake. Sleep had become a luxury ever since Emma died. He quietly folded the blanket from the couch. The bedroom upstairs stayed untouched. He hadn't entered it in almost 2 years. Not because he couldn't, because every perfume bottle, every sweater, every photograph still belonged to someone his heart hadn't learned to lose. "Daddy." A sleepy voice drifted from the hallway. 7-year-old Noah rubbed his eyes. His dinosaur pajamas dragged across the wooden floor. "You didn't sleep again." Daniel smiled. "Someone had to make breakfast." Noah frowned. "You always say that." "I know, but today it's true." The boy hugged him tightly. "You miss Mommy today?" Daniel closed his eyes. "Every day." Noah nodded. Children understood grief differently. Adults hid it. Children simply carried it. Breakfast wasn't much. Toast, eggs, orange slices. Daniel quietly pushed a larger portion toward Noah. "You aren't eating?" "I'm not very hungry." That wasn't true. He hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. The refrigerator was nearly empty. The electricity bill sat unpaid beneath a coffee mug. His old pickup truck needed brakes. His bank account contained $39. But Noah didn't need another worry. After breakfast, Daniel checked the weather. Heavy rain. Perfect. Bad. Weather meant fewer people hiking near Pine Ridge Forest. That made today's search safer. 3 weeks earlier, a teenage girl had disappeared inside those woods. Police searched. Volunteers searched. Nothing. Daniel knew those mountains better than anyone. For 12 years, he had worked as a forest ranger, until budget cuts ended his job. Even unemployed, he still searched every morning. Not because anyone paid him, because someone's daughter deserved to come home. He grabbed his backpack. Compass, first aid kit, water, old binoculars. His late wife's photograph tucked inside the front pocket. Always, "Daddy?" "Yeah." "When we find the girl." Daniel smiled. "We'll tell her parents she was brave." Noah grinned. "Mom would have said that." Daniel looked toward the cloudy sky. "She would have." Neither of them noticed. A black SUV parked quietly across the street. Someone inside lowered a camera. Click. Another picture. Then another. The engine started and followed them from a distance. Rain had already soaked the forest floor before sunrise. The tall pine trees stood like silent soldiers, their branches swaying under the weight of the wind. Daniel adjusted the straps of his old backpack and looked down at Noah. "Stay close." "I always do." Noah smiled, gripping the small flashlight hanging around his neck. They had walked these trails together for years. Daniel never treated his son like a burden. He treated him like a teammate. Every weekend, every school holiday, every free morning, they explored the forest. Daniel believed something simple. A child who learns to respect nature learns to respect people. 20 minutes later, Daniel suddenly stopped walking. Noah nearly bumped into him. "What is it?" Daniel crouched beside the muddy trail. "Fresh tire marks. Very fresh." "Noah." "Yeah." "Did you hear a vehicle earlier?" The boy nodded. "I thought it was thunder." Daniel slowly touched the tracks. They weren't from a Ranger truck. Too wide. Too expensive. Luxury off-road tires. Nobody should be driving here. Not legally. His stomach tightened. Meanwhile, 30 miles away, Judge Amelia Sterling stepped out of a black sedan. 3 security officers surrounded her immediately. She hated it. Ever since sentencing one of the country's most dangerous crime bosses 18 months ago, she had lived with constant protection. Death threats, letters, online harassment, anonymous phone calls. None of it ever reached the news. Her 11-year-old son, Ethan, thought security guards were simply mom's co-workers. She never corrected him. Some lies protected childhood. Inside the courthouse, her assistant hurried toward her. "Good morning, Your Honor." Amelia nodded. "Anything urgent?" The woman hesitated. There was another anonymous package. Amelia sighed. What was inside? A chess piece. She froze. Again, always the same thing. 1 black king. No note. No fingerprints. Nothing else. It was the 6th one. The FBI still couldn't explain it. Back inside the forest, Daniel's instinct screamed. He motioned for Noah to stay behind him. They followed the tire tracks for another 5 minutes. Then Daniel smelled smoke. Not wildfire. Diesel. Fresh diesel. Someone had parked nearby. He slowly pushed aside a thick bush. His heartbeat stopped. Hidden between the trees sat 3 black SUVs. Engines still warm. No license plates. Windows tinted. "This isn't right." He whispered. Noah looked confused. "Camping." Daniel shook his head. "No." Then voices. "Man, at least 4." Daniel quickly pulled Noah behind a fallen log. The voices grew louder. "Move her tonight." "The courthouse." "Before the hearing." "The judge must sign." Daniel's eyes narrowed. The judge? He carefully lifted his binoculars. 4 armed men, 1 laptop, several maps spread across the hood of an SUV. 1 photograph lay on top. Rain blew it sideways. Daniel caught a clear glimpse. A woman, elegant, dark hair, federal judge's robe. Judge Amelia Sterling. His pulse quickened. Why would armed men have photographs of a federal judge? Then another picture appeared. This time, a smiling schoolboy wearing a blue soccer jersey. Daniel's chest tightened. The men weren't talking about a legal case anymore. They were planning something much worse. One of them unfolded a courthouse blueprint. The explosion goes here. Another pointed toward a hallway. The boy enters from the east side. Daniel felt every muscle in his body tense. Explosion. Boy. Judge. This wasn't robbery. This was an assassination. A branch cracked beneath Noah's shoe. Tiny. Barely a sound. But in a silent forest, it was enough. Every head turned. Who's there? Daniel didn't think. Run. He grabbed Noah's hand. The forest exploded into motion. There! Get them. Gunfire ripped through the trees. Birds burst into the sky. Daniel shoved Noah behind a massive oak. A bullet slammed into the trunk inches from his face. Daddy, I'm here. Another shot, which splintered. Daniel looked around desperately. No way back. No phone signal. No ranger station nearby. Only forest. He spotted a narrow deer trail disappearing downhill. This way. They sprinted through thick brush. Branches whipped across their faces. Mud splashed beneath every step. Behind them, engines roared to life. The SUVs weren't staying hidden anymore. They were hunting. Half an hour later, Daniel and Noah reached the old Ranger Tower, abandoned years ago. Inside, Daniel locked the rusted door. Both of them gasped for breath. Noah's hands trembled. "Daddy, they're bad people." Daniel nodded. "Yes." "Are they coming?" He looked through the cracked window. Nothing. Too quiet. That frightened him even more. He reached for the emergency radio. Dead. No power. The landline. Cut. Of course. Then his old cell phone buzzed. One tiny bar of signal. Just one. He dialed 911. Call failed. Again. Failed. Again. Nothing. The signal disappeared. Daniel closed his eyes. Think. Then he remembered. Today's hearing. Judge Amelia Sterling. At 10 a.m. If those men were telling the truth, she had less than 6 hours left. He looked at Noah. "We're leaving?" "Where?" "The courthouse." "But it's far." "I know." "We won't make it." Daniel looked into his son's frightened eyes. "We have to." Noah swallowed hard. "What if nobody believes us?" Daniel picked up his old Ranger badge from his backpack. It had expired years ago. Still, it reminded him who he was. "Then we'll keep telling the truth until someone does." Outside, hidden among the trees, a sniper quietly lowered his rifle. He smiled. "They're heading exactly where we wanted." Into his radio, he whispered, "Phase 2 begins now." Rain hammered against the windshield as Daniel's 20-year-old pickup rattled down the highway. The engine coughed every few miles. The fuel gauge hovered just above empty. Noah sat silently beside him, clutching his dinosaur backpack against his chest. Neither of them spoke. Both were replaying the same thing. The blueprints, the judge's photograph, the little boy's picture, and the words, "The explosion goes here." Daniel tightened both hands around the steering wheel. He had spent 12 years reading forests, tracking animals, finding missing hikers, spotting danger before anyone else noticed it. One lesson had never failed him. Predators never hunt without a reason. Those men weren't random criminals. They were organized, prepared, patient. That frightened him more than the guns. An hour later, the skyline appeared through the rain. Steel buildings, traffic, police sirens somewhere in the distance. Daniel pulled into a gas station. The truck sputtered once before stopping. He checked his wallet. $23. He sighed. "Fill it with 20. The cashier nodded. Noah quietly watched his father count every dollar. When Daniel returned, the boy held out 5 crumpled $1 bills. "I've been saving these." Daniel smiled softly. "For what?" "So we could buy Mom flowers on her birthday." Daniel's heart tightened. "You keep them." "But we need gas." Daniel gently pushed Noah's hand back. "Some things are worth more than gasoline." Noah carefully folded the money and placed it back into his pocket. Across town, Judge Amelia entered courtroom 7. Everything appeared normal. Lawyers organized papers. Reporters whispered. Security officers checked every entrance. Her assistant leaned close. "The witnesses arrived." "Good. And your son is downstairs with Officer Mills." Amelia smiled. For the first time that morning, Ethan loved visiting the courthouse. He wanted to become a lawyer someday. She secretly hoped he wouldn't. Justice had cost her too much already. Outside, Daniel parked across the street. The courthouse towered above them. Television vans crowded the entrance. Police officers stood everywhere. "Noah." "Yeah." "You stay close." "I promise." Daniel hurried toward the main entrance. A security guard stepped forward. "Identification." Daniel handed over his driver's license. "What brings you here?" "I need to speak to Judge Amelia Sterling." The guard almost laughed. "So does everyone." "It's urgent." "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Then step aside." Daniel took a deep breath. "There are armed men coming." The guard's expression changed, only slightly. "What?" I found them in Pine Ridge Forest. They're planning an attack today. The second guard joined them. You need to leave. Daniel's frustration grew. I'm telling the truth. So is every conspiracy theorist. I'm not crazy. Sir, the first guard said firmly, leave before you're arrested. Daniel looked around desperately. Hundreds of people, dozens of officers, so much security. Yet somehow he had never felt more helpless. Then he noticed something. A black SUV, parked across the street. Same model, same tinted windows. His stomach dropped. One of the forest vehicles. They were already here. Inside the SUV, a man wearing sunglasses smiled. They made it. Another man adjusted an earpiece. What about the father? Ignore him. Nobody believes poor men with muddy boots. The driver started the engine, exactly as planned. Daniel suddenly grabbed the security guard's arm. Look, he pointed toward the SUV. They're here. Both guards turned. The SUV calmly drove away with traffic. Nothing suspicious. One guard frowned. That's enough. Metal handcuffs clicked around Daniel's wrists. Noah's face turned pale. Daddy, it's okay. No, it's not. People stopped walking. Phones appeared. Someone started recording. A woman whispered, he looks dangerous. Daniel closed his eyes for a second, not because of the handcuffs, because Noah had heard that sentence. Just then, a loud voice echoed from behind. Excuse me. Everyone turned. An elderly homeless veteran hurried toward them. His gray beard dripped with rain. His clothes were worn, but his eyes were sharp. Don't arrest him. One guard frowned. You know this man? The veteran nodded. He saved my life. Daniel looked confused. The old man smiled. 3 winters ago. You pulled me out of the river. You stayed with me until the ambulance came. You probably don't remember. Daniel searched his memory. Then he did. A freezing January morning. An elderly man trapped beneath broken ice. He had never learned the man's name. You. Daniel whispered. The veteran nodded. They're telling the truth. The guards exchanged uncertain looks. He isn't the kind of man who invents stories. One guard unlocked the handcuffs. I'm sorry. Daniel didn't waste a second. Please. I don't need an apology. I need someone to warn the judge. Upstairs. Court was already beginning. Judge Amelia adjusted her glasses. The court is now in session. Outside, Daniel and Noah sprinted to the courthouse lobby. An elevator door closed just before they reached it. Daniel slammed the button. Come on. Too slow. He looked toward the emergency staircase. Stairs. They ran. 5 flights. Noah struggled to keep up. Daddy? Almost there. Their footsteps echoed through the concrete stairwell. Neither of them noticed a maintenance worker quietly locking the stairwell door behind them. He removed an earpiece. Into a hidden microphone he whispered, "The witness is trapped." The heavy steel door slammed shut behind them. Bang! Daniel stopped instantly. He turned the handle. It wouldn't move. He pulled harder. Locked. Noah looked up, breathing heavily. Daddy? Daniel forced another pull. Nothing. Someone had locked them inside. From the other side, footsteps slowly faded away. Daniel stepped back. His instinct screamed. This was an accident. Someone inside the courthouse was helping the attackers. He scanned the narrow stairwell. Concrete walls. Emergency lights. One dusty window barely large enough for a child. No cameras. No emergency phone. Nothing. Noah tugged on his sleeve. They know we're here. Daniel nodded. I think they do. The little boy swallowed. Are we going to die? Daniel knelt immediately. He placed both hands on Noah's shoulders. Listen to me. You remember what Mom always said? Noah nodded slowly. Brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Daniel smiled. It means you keep moving anyway. Noah took a deep breath. I'm brave. Yes, you are. Meanwhile, inside courtroom 7, Judge Amelia listened to opening arguments. Her attention drifted for only a second. She glanced toward the front row. Officer Mills sat beside Ethan, her son quietly colored inside a notebook. She smiled. He looked safe. She returned her attention to the case. She had no idea danger had already entered the building. 3 floors below, a janitor slowly pushed his cleaning cart down an empty hallway. Nobody noticed him. Courthouse staff smiled politely as they walked past. Inside the mop bucket, beneath dirty towels, rested a compact assault rifle. The janitor checked his watch. 10:17 a.m., exactly on schedule. Back inside the stairwell, Daniel searched every pocket. Compass, knife, flashlight, rope. Nothing heavy enough to break the steel door. Then his eyes stopped. The old fire extinguisher, mounted beside the wall. Rusty, but full. He pulled it free. Step back. Cover your ears. Crash. The extinguisher slammed against the lock. Paint chipped away. The door barely moved. Again. Bang. Metal bent. Again. Boom. The third strike echoed through the stairwell. Finally, the lock snapped. The door flew open. Daniel grabbed Noah's hand. Run. At that exact moment, the fake janitor entered the courthouse basement. Another man waited beside an electrical control room. You took long enough. The witness? Locked upstairs. The judge? In court. The boy? Front row. Everything was proceeding perfectly. The second man smiled. No mistakes. The janitor opened the cleaning cart, removed the rifle, then a black duffel bag. Inside, plastic explosives. Upstairs, Daniel burst into the 4th floor hallway. Employees looked up in surprise. He ignored them. He only needed one thing. Courtroom 7. He spotted a courthouse directory. Courtroom 7. 5th floor. End of East Hall. They ran again. As they reached the 5th floor, Daniel suddenly froze. 3 men wearing expensive suits stood outside the courtroom. No briefcases. No files. No lawyers' badges. Just expensive suits. Watching. Waiting. One of them quietly touched his earpiece. Daniel immediately looked away. Years in the forest had taught him another lesson. Never let a predator know you've recognized it. He lowered his voice. Noah. Yeah. Don't look at those men. I wasn't. Good. We're taking another hallway. The suited men watched Daniel disappear. One frowned. Was that him? Another nodded. The ranger? He saw us. The tallest man calmly smiled. Then phase 3 starts early. He reached into his jacket. Not for a gun. For a phone. One message. He's approaching. Send. Inside the courtroom, Judge Amelia struck the gavel. Order. A witness approached the stand. Just then, her assistant quietly entered through the side door. She leaned close. Your Honor, there was another security concern downstairs. Amelia sighed. What now? A man insists someone is trying to kill you. She almost rolled her eyes. Again, he has a child with him. She paused. A child? Yes. What does he want? He says he found armed men in Pine Ridge Forest. Amelia looked toward the clock. Another distraction. Another conspiracy. Another frightened stranger. She nodded once. Tell security to remove him. Outside, Daniel heard every word through the half-open courtroom door. He closed his eyes. Too late. Nobody believed him. Again, Noah quietly squeezed his father's hand. What now? Daniel looked around. There had to be another way. Then he noticed something strange. A courthouse maintenance map hanging on the wall. Behind Courtroom 7, there was a narrow service corridor, used only by maintenance workers. His eyes widened. If we can't go through the front. He whispered, we'll go through the back. Neither Daniel nor Judge Amelia realized the fake janitor was already crawling through that very service corridor. Only 30 feet separated them. And inside his duffel bag, the timer had already begun counting down. 14:59, 14:58, 14:57. The red numbers kept shrinking. 14:56, 14:55. The fake janitor moved silently through the narrow maintenance corridor behind courtroom 7. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. He had rehearsed this route dozens of times. No cameras, no witnesses, no mistakes. He reached a steel service door and slowly opened it just enough to look inside. The courtroom was only a few feet away. Judge Amelia Sterling sat behind the bench. Lawyers argued over legal documents. Reporters typed quietly. Security officers stood near both entrances. And in the front row, a young boy laughed softly at something he had drawn. The janitor smiled. Target confirmed. He quietly placed a duffel bag beneath an electrical panel hidden behind the courtroom wall. The digital timer continued. 14:02. Meanwhile, Daniel and Noah hurried through the dim maintenance hallway. Dust covered the concrete floor. Old electrical wires hung from the ceiling. Daniel had never been inside this part of the courthouse, but years of navigating abandoned ranger stations had taught him one thing. Every building had another way in. He studied every door carefully. Suddenly, he noticed fresh muddy footprints. Not his. Large boots, moving toward courtroom 7. He crouched beside them, still wet, only minutes old. His heartbeat quickened. We're close. Back inside the courtroom, Judge Amelia listened patiently as a corporate attorney questioned a witness. She appeared calm, professional, unshakable, but something felt wrong. Not because of the trial, because of the silence. Courtrooms had a rhythm. Pens moved, papers shuffled, people coughed. Today, it felt too quiet, almost as if everyone was waiting. She glanced toward Officer Mills. He stood near Ethan as usual. Nothing unusual. Still, her instincts refused to settle. Outside the building, 3 black SUVs slowly parked along different streets. Their engines remained running. One driver adjusted a small earpiece. Phase 4. Another voice answered. Ready. The third simply replied, execute. Daniel suddenly stopped walking. He heard it, a faint metallic click. Very soft, almost impossible to notice. But Forrest had trained his ears better than cities ever could. Metal against plastic. He slowly looked toward the wall. Behind a ventilation grate, a tiny red light blinked. Blink, blink, blink. Not electricity. A timer. His blood froze. He pulled the grate away. Inside, plastic explosives. Enough to destroy half the hallway. Noah gasped. Daddy? Daniel immediately checked the display. 11:18. Another bomb. Not the main one. A secondary charge. He realized something terrifying. The explosion in the courtroom was only the beginning. Inside the courtroom, a clerk quietly approached Judge Amelia. Your Honor. She leaned slightly forward. The man from downstairs. What about him? He somehow reached the maintenance level. Amelia sighed. Where's security? They're looking. She nodded. Good. She still believed Daniel was simply another desperate man trying to interrupt proceedings. She had no idea he was only a few walls away, trying to save every life inside. Daniel quickly examined the device. Military-grade wiring, motion sensors, remote trigger, professional work. He couldn't disarm it safely, but he could warn people. He grabbed Noah's shoulders. Listen carefully. I'm listening. You stay behind me. I will. No matter what happens. Noah interrupted quietly. I know. We keep moving. Daniel smiled. His son was braver than most adults. They reached another steel door. A small window overlooked the courtroom. Daniel carefully peeked inside. His breathing stopped. He immediately recognized a woman from the photographs. Judge Amelia Sterling. She looked exactly as she had in the newspaper. Calm, confident, completely unaware. Then his eyes moved toward the front row. A young boy, blue jacket, soccer shoes. Exactly the same child from the criminal's photograph. Daniel whispered, It's him. Just then, another movement caught his eye. The fake janitor, walking quietly behind the courtroom staff, carrying a toolbox. Daniel instantly recognized him from the forest. There was no doubt. This was one of the armed men. The janitor slowly reached inside the toolbox. Not for a wrench, for a handgun fitted with a suppressor. Daniel's pulse exploded. There wasn't time to think. No time to find security. No time to explain. He shoved the maintenance door open. It slammed against the wall. Bang! Every head inside the courtroom turned. The fake janitor looked directly at Daniel. Their eyes met. For one frozen second, both men understood. The plan had been exposed. The attacker reached for his weapon. Daniel shouted with everything he had, "Get down!" Judge Amelia stood instantly. What is the meaning of... Before she could finish, the gunman fired. PHHD. The suppressed shot shattered a courtroom light. Instead of hitting its target, people screamed. Papers flew into the air. Security officers reached for their weapons. The gunman threw a smoke grenade across the floor. White smoke exploded through the courtroom. Visibility disappeared. Someone yelled, "Gun!" Another shouted, "Protect the judge." Daniel pushed Noah behind a marble pillar. He searched desperately through the smoke. Where was the attacker? Then he heard something much worse. Beep, beep, beep. The sound wasn't coming from the hallway anymore. It was coming from inside the courtroom. Daniel's face turned pale. The bomb had already been moved, and the countdown was almost over. 5 o'clock, 4:59, 4:58. The shrill beeping echoed through the courtroom. 4:58, 4:57. Daniel's eyes darted across the room. Smoke swallowed everything. Lawyers crawled beneath tables. Reporters abandoned their cameras. People screamed over one another. The courtroom had become pure chaos. Everybody stayed down. A security officer shouted. Another officer fired toward the moving shadow inside the smoke. The fake janitor disappeared behind a marble column. 2 more armed men burst through the rear emergency exit. They weren't here to escape. They were here to finish the job. Judge Amelia grabbed Ethan. "Stay behind me." The boy was shaking. "Nom." She pulled him toward the judge's bench. Years of legal training meant nothing now. She wasn't a judge anymore. She was only a mother. Daniel searched the smoke. There, under the jury box, a black duffel bag. A tiny red display flashed. 431. His stomach dropped. That was the main bomb. Noah looked at him. "Daddy?" Daniel pointed behind a thick concrete pillar. "Stay there." "No. Noah, I'm not leaving you." Daniel knelt. His voice stayed calm. "You remember our camping rule?" The boy nodded with tears in his eyes. "When danger comes." "We listened the first time." Daniel smiled. "Good. I need you to do that now." Noah slowly stepped behind the pillar. His small hands trembled. "I love you." Daniel answered immediately. "I love you more." Across the room, one attacker aimed directly at Judge Amelia. He squeezed the trigger. PHHD. Before the bullet reached her, Daniel tackled the gunman from the side. Both men crashed across polished wooden flooring. The pistol slid away. The attacker reached for a knife. Daniel blocked the strike with his forearm. Pain shot through his arm. He ignored it. The man swung again. Daniel drove his shoulder into the attacker's chest. The knife clattered away. A nearby security officer finally reached them. The attacker was restrained. Another explosion echoed outside the courthouse. Boom! Windows shattered. People screamed again. Car alarms filled the streets. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Judge Amelia instinctively wrapped herself around Ethan. "What is happening?" No one answered. Daniel crawled toward the black duffel bag. The timer continued. 3:48. He slowly unzipped it. Inside, plastic explosives. Military detonators. 3 separate timers. His breathing became heavier. This wasn't homemade. Someone had spent months planning this. A bomb technician would need 20 minutes. He had less than 4. One security officer shouted, "Don't touch it." Daniel looked up. "If nobody does, we all die." He carefully examined the wiring. Blue, yellow, green, 3 independent circuits. Whoever built it expected professionals. Then he noticed something. A tiny manufacturer mark. His eyes narrowed. Years ago, while serving as a forest ranger, Daniel had completed emergency rescue training alongside military explosive units during wildfire operations. He wasn't a bomb expert, but he knew one critical rule: never trust the obvious wire. The timer reached 3:02. Judge Amelia slowly approached despite security trying to stop her. "What are you doing?" Daniel never looked up. "Trying to buy everyone another tomorrow." For the first time, Amelia truly looked at him. Not at his old jacket, not at his muddy boots, not at his worn backpack. She saw steady hands, calm breathing, a father risking everything for strangers, including the woman who had ordered him removed only minutes earlier. Another officer shouted, "We have to evacuate." Daniel shook his head. Too late. The blast radius reaches every exit. Silence followed. People understood. Running wouldn't save them anymore. The timer read 2:19. Daniel carefully removed a small flashlight from his backpack. He angled the light beneath the wiring. Then he smiled, just slightly. "I see it." "What?" Judge Amelia asked. The real trigger. Hidden beneath the visible wires was a paper-thin fiber cable, almost invisible. Cutting any of the colored wires first would have detonated the bomb instantly. The visible puzzle was only a trap. Daniel slowly reached into his pocket. A tiny folding knife. Its blade was barely 2 inches long. His hands remained perfectly still. 1:41. Every person in the courtroom watched without breathing. No cameras, no reporters, no arguments, only silence. Daniel whispered to himself, "Steady." He slid the blade beneath the nearly invisible fiber line. One careful movement. No pressure, no hesitation. Then, snip, the timer froze. 1:26. Nothing happened. No explosion. No fire. No blast. Only silence. Then, the display went completely black. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody even believed it. Then one bomb technician, who had finally reached the courtroom, stared at the device. His eyes widened. He slowly looked at Daniel. His voice barely came out. "You just saved over 200 people." The room remained silent, not because they were afraid anymore, because they had just witnessed ordinary courage do something extraordinary. For nearly 10 seconds, nobody moved. The smoke slowly drifted toward the shattered windows. Pieces of broken glass covered the courtroom floor like tiny crystals. The digital timer remained dark. The bomb was dead, but the silence felt louder than the explosion everyone had expected. Then someone began crying. A young court clerk. She covered her face and sobbed uncontrollably. A bailiff leaned against the wall, shaking. One of the security officers slowly removed his cap and whispered, "We're alive." Only then did the room begin to breathe again. Judge Amelia looked at Daniel. For the first time since seeing him, she had no title, no authority, no courtroom voice, only gratitude. "You." Her words disappeared. Daniel stood slowly. His injured arm hung awkwardly at his side. Blood soaked through the torn sleeve of his jacket. He barely noticed. His eyes searched the courtroom. "Noah." A small voice answered immediately. "I'm here." Daniel turned. Noah ran straight into his father's arms. Daniel hugged him tighter than ever before. "You listened?" "You told me to." "I'm proud of you." The little boy buried his face into Daniel's shoulder. "I thought I lost you." Daniel closed his eyes. "So did I." Suddenly, one security officer shouted, "Where's the janitor?" Everyone looked around. The fake janitor was gone. Judge Amelia immediately understood. There were more than one. Daniel nodded. There always were. Outside, sirens surrounded the courthouse. Police vehicles, SWAT trucks, ambulances. News helicopters circled overhead. Within minutes, the courthouse had become the biggest crime scene in the state. FBI Special Agent Marcus Hale arrived less than 20 minutes later. He entered the damaged courtroom carrying a black evidence case. His eyes immediately stopped on Daniel. "You're the civilian?" One officer answered. "He's the reason everyone's alive." Marcus looked toward the disabled bomb, then back at Daniel. You military? No. Bomb squad? No. Police? Daniel shook his head. I used to be a forest ranger. Marcus blinked. A ranger? Daniel nodded once. Marcus quietly smiled. I think I'm going to need the whole story. Hours passed. Every witness gave a statement. Every hallway was searched. Every vehicle outside was inspected. By sunset, the FBI confirmed something terrifying. The attack had never been about killing Judge Amelia. She was only the first target. Inside the investigation room, Marcus spread dozens of photographs across a table. Maps, blueprints, financial records, satellite images. Daniel studied them quietly. Then, one picture caught his attention. A mountain cabin, hidden deep inside Pine Ridge Forest. He leaned closer. I know this place. Marcus looked up. You do? Daniel nodded. It burned down 6 years ago. Marcus frowned. Our drones photographed it yesterday. Daniel slowly looked back at the image. No, he whispered. It didn't burn. Marcus leaned closer. What do you mean? Daniel pointed toward the roof. See that chimney? Yes. It collapsed in the fire. Marcus looked carefully. The chimney was standing. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. This photo isn't old. Marcus immediately understood. The cabin was rebuilt. Daniel nodded. Someone rebuilt it without permits. Marcus stared at him. Can you find it again? Daniel answered without hesitation. I could find it blindfolded. Meanwhile, Judge Amelia sat alone inside her office. Her hands still trembled. She replayed the day again and again. The muddy boots, the security guards, her own words. Remove that man immediately. She closed her eyes. She had sentenced criminals with less certainty than she had judged Daniel. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Her assistant entered quietly. The press wants a statement. Amelia shook her head. Later, the governor called. Later, the president's office also. I said later. The assistant nodded. Before leaving, she hesitated. There's something else. What? The little boy. Amelia looked up. Noah? Yes. He's sitting beside your son. Amelia walked outside. The hallway was strangely peaceful. 2 children sat on the floor, drawing, coloring, laughing, as if today had never happened. Ethan looked up. Mom. Amelia smiled weakly. What are you drawing? Noah answered proudly. A forest. Ethan added, and a courthouse. Amelia frowned slightly. Why both? Noah smiled. Because heroes can be anywhere. Amelia looked toward Daniel. He stood near a window, speaking quietly with Agent Marcus, still wearing the same torn jacket, still refusing medical treatment, until everyone else had been treated first. Something inside her changed. Not admiration. Respect. Real respect. That evening, Marcus approached Daniel again. We found something. Daniel looked up. What? Marcus handed him a photograph. Daniel's face immediately lost color. It wasn't the cabin. It wasn't the bomb. It wasn't one of the attackers. It was Emma, his late wife. A picture taken only 3 weeks earlier. Alive. Standing outside the rebuilt cabin. Daniel whispered, That's impossible. Marcus looked at him carefully. We checked. The photograph is authentic. Daniel's breathing became uneven. No. I buried my wife 2 years ago. Marcus remained silent, then quietly said, Either someone wants you to believe she's alive, or everything you think happened 2 years ago is a lie. Daniel stared at the photograph. The courtroom attack, the forest, the bomb. None of it suddenly mattered, because one impossible question now consumed every thought in his mind. If Emma had truly died, who was the woman standing in that photograph? Daniel couldn't take his eyes off the photograph. Rain dripped from the edge of the courthouse roof outside the window. The entire investigation room seemed to disappear around him. Only one face remained. Emma, the same warm smile, the same silver necklace. she wore every day. The same small scar near her left eyebrow from falling off a horse when she was 16. It couldn't be fake. It was her. Agent Marcus Hale quietly pulled out a chair. "Sit down." Daniel didn't move. "My wife died." Marcus answered carefully. "Tell me everything." Daniel finally sat. His voice was calm. Too calm. Sometimes grief became so old, it sounded emotionless. 2 years ago, Emma volunteered with Mountain Rescue. Marcus nodded. "I read that. There was a landslide." Daniel continued. "They found pieces of the rescue truck, but never her body." Marcus looked up. "Never?" Daniel slowly shook his head. "The river carried everything away. They declare her legally dead 6 months later." Noah had been only 5 years old. He still remembered standing beside an empty coffin, a funeral without a body. Marcus exchanged a glance with another FBI analyst. "That changes everything." "What do you mean?" Marcus slid another folder across the table. "We recovered this from one of the attacker's SUVs. Inside was a list. 10 names. Judges, federal prosecutors, journalists, police commanders. Each name had an address, a photograph, a schedule. One name had already been crossed out. Judge Amelia Sterling. The second name had today's date beside it. The attack wasn't over. Daniel looked at Marcus. "Who's next?" Marcus pointed toward the list. "Senator Rebecca Hayes. She was scheduled to speak at the State Children's Hospital in less than 3 hours." Daniel's heart sank. Children. Again. Just then, the door burst open. A young FBI technician hurried inside. "Sir." Marcus turned. "What is it?" "We decrypted one of the attacker's phones. And they never planned to escape." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "They expected to die." The room fell silent. The technician continued. "But someone else was giving orders." He connected a tablet to the conference screen. A single encrypted message appeared. "Phase 1 complete. Prepare the shepherd." Daniel stared at the words. "The shepherd?" Marcus folded his arms. "Probably the leader." "No." Daniel whispered. "I've heard that before." Marcus immediately looked at him. "Where?" Daniel closed his eyes, trying to remember. Then it came back. 8 years earlier, during his ranger service. A missing hiker's case. An abandoned cave. A symbol carved into stone. Beneath it, one sentence. "The shepherd always finds the lost." Back then, everyone thought it was just graffiti. Now, Daniel wasn't so sure. Meanwhile, Judge Amelia entered the hospital waiting room. Ethan slept across 2 chairs. Doctors checking for minor cuts caused by shattered glass. She quietly kissed his forehead. "I'm sorry." The boy smiled sleepily. "You saved me." Amelia looked toward the window. "No, someone else did." Across the room, Noah quietly drew another picture. Purple trees. A courthouse. 2 fathers standing together. Ethan pointed. "Who's that?" "My dad." "And the other man?" Noah smiled. "I don't know yet." Back at FBI headquarters, Marcus's phone rang. His expression changed instantly. "What?" Silence. Then, when he looked at Daniel, they found the cabin. Daniel stood immediately, and Marcus swallowed. "It's empty." Daniel sighed. "We're too late." Marcus slowly shook his head. "No, they found something else." He placed another photograph on the table. It showed the inside of the cabin. One wall was covered with hundreds of photographs. Every victim, every judge, every prosecutor, every attack, years of planning. But one picture sat alone in the center, larger than all the others. Emma Carter, pinned with a red string, leading toward Daniel. Marcus looked directly at him. "You weren't just a witness." Daniel frowned. "What are you saying?" Marcus answered quietly. "I think you were always the real target." Daniel's blood ran cold. At that exact moment, his cell phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello?" A calm male voice replied. "I was wondering how long it would take before you recognize your wife's face." Daniel stood frozen. Who is this? The man laughed softly. You've been looking for the wrong people for 2 years. Daniel's voice hardened. What did you do to Emma? A long silence followed. Then, the stranger said something that stopped Daniel's heart. Ask yourself one question, Ranger. Why was there never a body to bury? The line went dead. Daniel slowly lowered the phone. Marcus stared at him. What did he say? Daniel looked toward the dark window. His reflection stared back. I don't think this is about stopping terrorists anymore. Marcus frowned. Then what is it about? Daniel whispered. It's about finding my wife. Daniel stared at the silent phone. The unknown number had disappeared. No caller ID. No location. Nothing. Only one sentence continued echoing inside his mind. Why was there never a body to bury? For 2 years, he had forced himself to stop asking that question. Now, someone else had asked it for him. Agent Marcus slowly reached for the phone. Can our cyber team trace it? A technician shook his head. Burner phone. It was active for less than 9 seconds. Marcus exhaled. They knew exactly what they were doing. Daniel looked toward the investigation board. Hundreds of photographs covered the wall. Judges, business leaders, attack locations, financial records. Then his eyes stopped on one picture. The fake janitor. He remembered something. The tattoo. Marcus looked up. What tattoo? On his wrist. When we fought inside the courtroom. He had a wolf tattoo. Marcus immediately called an analyst. Zoom every surveillance image of the suspect. Within seconds, security footage appeared on the large monitor. The analyst enlarged the man's wrist. Daniel was right. A black wolf. But beneath it, there were tiny numbers. 714. Marcus frowned. Could be a prison number. Another analyst interrupted. No, I've seen this before. Everyone turned. She opened an FBI database. After a few searches, one file appeared. Operation 714. Classified. Marcus's access card unlocked only the first page. His face changed. Daniel noticed. What is it? Marcus answered quietly. 20 years ago, the FBI investigated a private security company. They disappeared before the arrests. The investigation's code name, he looked back at the screen, was Operation 714. Daniel folded his arms. What happened to them? Marcus replied, they vanished. Every owner, every employee, every record. As if they never existed. Another agent entered the room, carrying a sealed evidence box. We found something inside the exploded SUV. Marcus opened it carefully. Inside, a silver key. Old, heavy, no markings except one tiny engraving. A pine tree. Daniel immediately recognized it. Pine Ridge. Marcus looked surprised. You know this symbol? Daniel nodded. Old ranger cabins. Every emergency shelter used that symbol. Marcus placed a key on the map. So there's another cabin. Daniel slowly smiled. No, there's a bunker. Silence filled the room. A bunker? Daniel pointed toward the mountain map. When I worked as a ranger, we weren't allowed near one area. They told us it was unstable ground, but nobody ever explained why. Marcus looked at the satellite images. There are no buildings there. Daniel nodded. Because it's underground. Across town, Judge Amelia finally returned home. The house felt strangely empty. Security officers surrounded the property. Floodlights illuminated every corner. She walked upstairs. Ethan was already asleep. She quietly sat beside his bed, watching him breathe. For several minutes, she simply cried. Not because she was weak, because today she had almost lost the only family she had left. Ethan suddenly opened one eye. Mom! She quickly wiped away the tears. I'm okay. He smiled sleepily. No, you're pretending. She laughed softly, maybe a little. The boy reached beneath his pillow. I made something. He handed her a folded drawing. It showed 3 people, a judge, a little boy, a man in a worn jacket. Above them, Noah had written in purple crayon, Heroes don't wear expensive shoes. Amelia stared at the drawing for a long time, then whispered, "You're right." Meanwhile, Daniel and Noah checked into a small roadside motel. Room 12, the cheapest room available. The carpet smelled old. The heater barely worked. Noah climbed onto bed. "Daddy?" "Yeah." "Are bad people still looking for us?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he tucked the blanket around Noah. "I'm here." "That's not what I asked." Daniel smiled sadly. "No, it isn't." After Noah fell asleep, Daniel quietly removed the photograph of Emma from his wallet. The edges had become worn over the years. He placed it beside the new FBI photograph. They looked identical. Same smile, same necklace, same eyes. Only the new photograph had one detail. The old one didn't. Daniel leaned closer. Behind Emma, barely visible through the trees, stood a man, watching her. His face couldn't be seen. Only one thing was clear. He carried a ranger's backpack. Daniel's breathing stopped. Only one person he knew carried that exact model. Someone he had trusted. Someone who had attended Emma's memorial service. Someone who had hugged him and promised to help raise Noah. Daniel whispered one name. Tom. At that exact moment, someone knocked softly on the motel door. "Knock! Knock!" Daniel quietly stood. It was nearly midnight. Nobody should know they were here. He looked through the peephole. No one. The hallway was empty. He slowly opened the door. On the floor lay a small wooden box. Inside it was Emma's silver wedding ring, the ring she had been wearing the day she disappeared. Beneath it, a handwritten note. Daniel unfolded it. Only 4 words were written. "She's waiting for you." The motel lights suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the hallway. And somewhere outside, an engine slowly started. The motel lights went out. Darkness swallowed the hallway. Only the faint glow of the exit sign painted the walls in deep red. Daniel's hand instinctively moved toward Noah's room. He wasn't thinking about Emma anymore. He was thinking about his son. Always his son. Another knock echoed, not on his door, somewhere downstairs. Then, silence. Daniel picked up the wooden box again. Emma's wedding ring felt cold against his fingertips. He knew every scratch on it. On the inside of the band, their anniversary was engraved. June 14th. There was no doubt. This wasn't a copy. This was hers. The ring had vanished the day she disappeared. Now, someone wanted him to have it. But why? He quietly closed the door, locked it, then pushed the old dresser against it. Not because it would stop armed men. Because it might buy Noah a few extra seconds. Noah stirred in his sleep. "Daddy, I'm here." "The lights." "They'll come back." The boy smiled sleepily. "As long as you're here." Daniel sat beside the bed. He gently brushed Noah's hair away from his forehead. "I'll always be here." Outside, a black pickup truck rolled slowly through the motel parking lot. Its headlights remained off. Inside, 2 men watched room 12. One lowered a pair of binoculars. "He's inside." The driver nodded. The boss said, "Don't touch the kid." And the father? A long pause. "If necessary, bring him alive." Back at FBI headquarters, Agent Marcus refused to go home. He couldn't shake one feeling. Something about the courthouse attack didn't fit. He replayed the security footage again, frame by frame, second by second. Then he froze the video. One attacker briefly turned his head before the smoke filled the room. Marcus zoomed in. Around the man's neck hung a silver compass. Old, military style. Marcus recognized it immediately. He opened another file. 23 years earlier, a decorated Army rescue unit had disappeared during a classified operation in the northern mountains. Their commander, Captain Thomas Reed. His call sign, Shepherd. Marcus's heartbeat quickened. Tom. He immediately searched another database. A personnel photograph appeared. Older now, with gray hair, but unmistakable. Marcus whispered, "No way." He picked up the phone. "Get me Daniel Carter." Meanwhile, Daniel couldn't sleep. Something bothered him. He looked at Emma's ring once more. Then he noticed something strange. Tiny dirt still clung to the inside. Dark gray dirt, not ordinary soil. Clay. Daniel frowned. He remembered that exact color. Pine Ridge. Only one place in the entire forest had gray clay. The abandoned limestone quarry. 20 miles north of the ranger station. He whispered to himself. This wasn't found. It was buried. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. Marcus. Daniel answered immediately. What happened? Marcus spoke quickly. Daniel, I think I know who Tom is. Daniel stood. What? Captain Thomas Reed. My former rescue commander. Daniel's face lost color. No. Marcus continued. He disappeared 23 years ago. Daniel interrupted. I worked under Tom Reed. Marcus stopped talking. What? Daniel stared into the darkness. He trained me. He taught me tracking. He attended my wedding. He carried Emma's coffin. Silence filled both ends of the call. Finally, Marcus spoke. If we're right, he didn't disappear. He built something. At that exact moment, a floorboard creaked outside room 12. Daniel immediately lowered his voice. Marcus, someone's here. What? I'll call you back. The line disconnected. Daniel quietly removed the motel curtain, just enough to see outside, a shadow cross the parking lot. Another moved behind the ice machine. Professional, disciplined, not thieves, hunters. He looked toward Noah, still asleep, peacefully unaware. Daniel quietly opened his backpack. Inside, his old ranger equipment, a flashlight, climbing rope, first aid kit, a flare gun, not a weapon, but loud enough to attract attention. He slipped the flare gun into his jacket. Another sound. This time, the motel room beside theirs. A woman screamed. Then, silence. Daniel's instincts screamed louder. It was a distraction. Someone wanted him to leave room 12. He didn't move. Instead, he whispered, Nice try. Outside, one of the men smiled. He didn't fall for it. The second man nodded. The boss was right. He's smarter than the report said. The driver picked up a radio. Permission for Phase 2. A calm voice answered. Granted. Without warning, every fire alarm inside the motel began blaring. Beep, beep, beep. Guests rushed into the hallways. Doors opened everywhere. People shouted. Children cried. Perfect confusion. Daniel knew exactly what it was. Cover. Someone wanted the hallway crowded, because crowds created blind spots. He grabbed Noah. We're leaving. The sleepy boy rubbed his eyes. Fire? I don't think so. Then why are we running? Daniel looked toward the hallway. Because someone wants us to. As father and son stepped into the corridor, Daniel noticed a little girl standing alone, no older than 6, crying. My mommy. She had become separated in the panic. Daniel looked toward the staircase, then toward Noah. He had seconds to choose. Protect only his own son, or stop to save someone else's child. Without hesitation, he lifted the little girl into his free arm. Stay with me. Noah smiled. I knew you'd do that. Daniel looked at him. Why? Noah answered simply, because that's who you are. Outside, the sniper, watching through a scope, lowered a rifle. He sighed. The boss was wrong. What? He really can't walk away from people who need help. The sniper slowly chambered around, which makes him predictable. He placed the crosshairs on Daniel's chest and whispered, Goodbye, Ranger. 3 months later, the courthouse looked completely different. Broken windows had been replaced. Fresh flowers lined the entrance. American flags fluttered gently in the morning breeze. But today, no trials were scheduled. Instead, hundreds of people had gathered for one reason, to honor a man who had never asked for recognition. Daniel stood quietly near the back of the crowd. He wore the same simple suit he had worn at Emma's memorial 2 years earlier. It was the only suit he owned. Beside him, Noah adjusted his tiny blue tie. Nervous? Daniel smiled. A little. Noah laughed. I've never seen you nervous. I usually hide it better. Judge Amelia Sterling stepped onto stage. The room immediately fell silent. She looked across the audience. Then her eyes found Daniel. For a long moment, she simply looked at him. Finally, she spoke. 3 months ago, I made the biggest mistake of my career. The audience listened carefully. I looked at a man's clothes instead of his character. I judged him before hearing a single word. She paused. And because of that, I nearly lost my son. Silence filled the room. Amelia stepped down from the stage. Instead of calling Daniel forward, she walked him herself. She stopped only inches away. Then, in front of judges, senators, police officers, and television cameras, she extended her hand. Mr. Carter, I'm sorry. Daniel looked at her for a second, then smiled gently. You don't owe me anything. She shook her head. I do. You reminded me that justice begins with listening. Daniel accepted her hand. The audience rose to its feet. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. The FBI later confirmed every member of the criminal network had been arrested. The attack had been planned by a corrupt businessman whose fraud trial was scheduled before Judge Amelia. He had wanted to silence the court forever. Instead, his crimes became national headlines. Several weeks later, Daniel received an unexpected letter. Not from the government, not from the FBI, from the State Forest Department. Inside was a job offer, Chief of Search and Rescue Operations. His old Ranger badge had finally found its way home. When Daniel walked into his new office for the first time, he quietly placed one photograph on the desk. Emma, he smiled softly. We did it. Across town, Judge Amelia created the Emma Carter Foundation, a charity dedicated to supporting children who had lost a parent and families of first responders. She insisted on one condition. Daniel's name would never appear on the building. When reporters asked why, she answered simply, some heroes don't need statues. One warm Saturday afternoon, Noah and Ethan met again. This time, not inside a courthouse, but in a park. The two boys chased a soccer ball across the grass, laughing, arguing, falling, getting back up, exactly the way children should. Daniel and Amelia watched from a nearby bench. Neither of them spoke for a while. Finally, Amelia smiled. You know, I almost had you thrown out. Daniel laughed. I remember. I'm glad security wasn't faster. So am I. The sun slowly disappeared behind the trees. Noah ran toward his father. Dad. What? Race you home. Daniel laughed. You're going to win. I know. The boy sprinted away. Daniel watched him run. Healthy, safe, happy. For the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel broken. He felt grateful because he finally understood something Emma had once told him. The greatest victory isn't being called a hero. It's making sure your child never stops believing heroes exist. Daniel smiled toward the fading sunset, then followed Noah home.